This is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
Vice President Mike Pence making a quick visit to Las Vegas and Nellis Air Force Base this week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Patrick Walker.
And I'm Steve Sebelius. Pence was here for two reasons, and one was to talk about a new entrepreneurship program opening up in Las Vegas.
We think the Silver State is the perfect place to open the first AFWorks storefront. Southern Nevada has been on the forefront of innovation in aviation for decades, stretching back to the Las Vegas Army Gunnery School, the first aerial gunnery school of its kind in the world, of course, the precursor to Nellis Air Force Base.
It's called AFWorks and will serve as a sort of hub for the Air Force to take in new ideas from students or scientists. It's located in the Howard Hughes Center near Paradise and Howard Hughes Parkway, so it can be close to the university. Pence also touted what he calls one of the largest increases in history in military spending and thanks Senator Dean Heller for helping push it through.
I am pleased to report that last year alone, the President signed the largest increase in military spending in nearly 10 years. And just a few weeks ago, with the strong support of Senator Dean Heller, President Trump signed legislation that will provide for one of the largest increases in military spending in American history.
Pence's second stop was at Nellis Air Force Base, where he went on to tell service members they may be called upon to defend the United States.
You, the brave men and women of Nellis Air Force Base, may yet be called into action. You are the instruments of American power. So on behalf of your Commander-in-Chief, I admonish you, be ready.
But if the official reason for the trip was to tout new programs and fire up the troops, the unofficial reason may have been to fire up the political base for Heller. The senator is facing re-election in November, and he's working hard to fend off Republican businessman Danny Tarkanian in the June primary.
Well, Tarkanian says he's not bothered by Heller appearing with the vice president. I sat down with Danny Tarkanian to talk about the race so far. The president has the legislature, and then, of course, the legislative body and the executive branch. They've had a hard time moving some legislation through. So you're saying you would be willing to slow down and try to find common ground to work instead of ramrodding things through?
Well, they did that. They did that with Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill in the 1980s, and it worked very well. I mean, Republicans didn't get everything they wanted, but they got enough. They felt really good about it. The Democrats, with Tip's influence, did the same thing. You don't see that anymore right now. Right now, it's like, for example, they could have came up with a really good tax that both sides would have agreed with. But the Democrats wouldn't even consider sitting down and negotiating with them, so they got nothing they agreed with, and instead they're using that as a political tool in the next elections. Now, that's not what's best for our country. Do what's best for your constituents, what's best for our country, and stop worrying about the next political campaign.
Heller playing host this week to the vice president out at Nellis. He's been up on stage with the president when the tax bill passed. Do you have any concerns that the White House might be looking at him now, possibly endorsing him, or have you heard anything about an endorsement in the race?
So we have a vice president that comes into the state of Nevada for something at the Air Force Base, and the senior senator is going to be there with him, and all of a sudden that should give me shivers and worry about where the White House stands. Of course not. Dean Heller will try to do anything to make it look like he's in good graces with the president. The fact of the matter is, when the president needed him the most, when he was running for the presidency, Dean Heller was a never-Trumper. He said, I will vehemently oppose our nominee. Let me be very, very clear, I do not support Donald Trump. Now that I got in the race, all of a sudden he and the president are best friends, and because he wants to get through the primary. Once the primary is over, and if he somehow wins, where do you think he's going to be standing? He'll be right back catering to the moderates and liberals to hopefully win a general election. And if that's the kind of person that Nevadans want in the Senate, they should vote for Dean Heller.
You mentioned the media. I think bottom line, some have predicted a blue wave in 2018 here in Nevada. You don't buy it?
Of course not. Everywhere I go, people talk about how great things are going with the economy right now, and how happy they are. I mean, how much more prosperous they are. And it's only been 11 months with President Trump, and many of his policies haven't been implemented yet. These are the America First policies he ran on, that the country put him in office to implement. The more of these things that get implemented, the better our economy, the better our national security is going to be. And I supported those principles when every other GOP candidate in Southern Nevada ran away from them because they're worried about their political future, like Dean Heller. I did what was right because I knew and believed in those America First policies, and that's what people will be voting on in November 2018.
All right, so I also spoke with Tarkanian about DACA, healthcare, and the AG cracking down on pot, all that on LasVegasNow.com. So let's talk about how these two kind of stack up with each other. So a couple of key, at least, issues that there are some differences on. So let's start with Senator Heller, Steve, and then talk about how he's different from Danny Tarkanian.
Sure, yeah, and the first one on the list there is the Gang of Eight immigration compromise. That had a pathway to citizenship. Nowadays, that's a very difficult thing for Republicans to talk about, although we recently heard that the DACA deal may include the wall and a pathway to citizenship, so that might not be as far off as it was before.
And then also at health care and Yucca Mountain, a couple of things where Heller is very different from Danny Tarkanian.
Yeah, and the Yucca Mountain, Heller is with pretty much where everyone is in the establishment of Nevada, which is to oppose it. Now, there are some exceptions, like politicians out in Nye County and who want that as a jobs program. But most people are where Dean Heller is on that.
All right, yeah, we'll put Danny Tarkanian up now. You can see that some pretty clear differences on those three issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And calling amnesty any pathway to citizenship, Danny Tarkanian considers an amnesty program. And that's going to resonate with a lot of people in the base that say, look, they broke the law to come here, and they shouldn't get to the head of the line. They shouldn't be allowed to become citizens as a result of that.
What do you think about the Yucca Mountain stance for him? Does that hurt him at all with any voters?
You know, I don't think that hurts him at all with voters, because Yucca Mountain is this issue that's been around for so long, and when you start talking about it, people's eyes kind of glaze over. Although with some people, it is an important issue. They don't want nuclear waste on the roads, on the rails here. But the Obamacare repeal, I think that's going to be a key difference between those two, because Senator Heller so